If we look at West Africa in particular, we see that the sub-region is undergoing an unprecedented food and nutrition crisis, with more than 38 million people projected to require emergency food assistance during this year's season. At the same time, we see climate change risks increasing, and they're often dramatically impacting agriculture production across the continent and threatening the livelihoods of people and particularly smallholder farmers. As we look to respond to these challenges, there is clearly a very big role that research and development in agriculture can play to improve food security and resilience. At the same time, we see how the widening gap in R&D spending is really getting bigger and bigger. If we look at Africa, in one half of African countries, R&D spending is actually declining. So in this context, the World Bank is working closely with the CGIAR on the accelerating the impact of CGIAR climate research for Africa, the Icra project. We'll hear more about it during the discussion, but an important goal of this project is to speed the transfer of climate smart agriculture innovations from laboratories and experiment stations into the hands of end users. And a particular focus of the Icra program is to strengthen regional collaboration. So this is clearly one of the areas where a pure national approach would not help us reach the scale needed. Building local capacity to promote innovation in agriculture by engaging Africa's RECs and their associated regional agriculture research networks will be a key enabler to bring innovation to scale. Among others, Icra is building important partnerships with the West and Central Council for Agriculture Research, CORAF, led by Dr. Abdul Tinkuano, who's with us today, and we'll get a chance to hear from him later in the program. We're also happy to see the strong linkages to operational work. Glad to see climate innovation being brought front and center into one of our most important project, our flagship program in West Africa, the West Africa Food System Resilience Program, FSRP, to build food system resilience and climate resilience as we look at medium and more longer term. So we're very happy to have with us today CGIAR and Icra team here with us. Many are in the building in the MC. Very warm welcome to all of you. And we look forward to hearing from all of you on how this project and this work is really translating science into action on the ground across Africa for improved food security and resilience for farmers. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to give the floor now to Dr. Abdul Tinkuano. He's the Executive Director of CORAF. He comes with a very strong background in crop science. He worked across sub-Saharan Africa with the International Crops Research Institute for the semi-arid tropics. He served as a member of the Research for Development Council at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, a member of the Institutional Management Committee of the World Vegetable Center. It is our pleasure to have you with us today, Doctor. So the floor is yours to give us your keynote address and get us started in the discussion. Over to you.
All right. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues of the Climate Smart community, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening to all from wherever in the world you join us today. I would like to start by thanking partners at the World Bank and CGIAR for welcoming me here today to address this timely World Bank event. Today, we focus on how we can support a climate-smart Africa future one driven by science and innovation in agriculture. I want to use this opportunity to demonstrate the unique value of the partnership between the World Bank, CGR, and my own organization, the West and Central Africa Council for Agricultural Research and Development, known as CORAF. But let us not forget why we are here. Agriculture remains central to the livelihoods of millions of Africans. Transforming African agriculture and the global food system it can support remains a priority for a sustainable growth and resilient communities across the continent. Despite decades of progress driven by partnership, policy, investment, and innovation, the triple challenge of conflict, COVID, and climate change now risk food security. These factors compound the climate challenge made abundantly clear in the most recent State of the Climate in Africa report, which says, in essence, that Africa's climate has warmed more than the global average since pre-industrial times. It also says that sea level rises along African coastlines have also been faster than the global mean, contributing to increases in the frequency and severity of coastal flooding, erosion, and salinity in low-lying cities. It also says that continental water bodies are steadily drying up, especially Lake Chad. In 1967 or thereabout, Lake Chad was about 4 times the size of the Gambia. Nowadays, it's about 1/4 the size of the Gambia. This is leading to significant adverse impacts of the agricultural sector, ecosystem, biodiversity, and the socio-economic development of surrounding nations. It also says, finally, that Africa was hit by several high-impact extreme weather events in 2021, and this is happening again in 2022. And Africa has been experiencing lingering droughts, extensive floods, and tropical cyclones. The subsequent challenge to Africa's food system is clear. Hunger in Africa has increased by almost a third in the last 2 years. It doesn't have to be that way. According to the IMF estimates, at least 123 million people globally, 12% of that is 12% of sub-Saharan Africa population are unable to meet the minimum food consumption needs right now. The 2022 State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World noted that while food security has declined in many regions of the world, Africa has continued to see increases. Therefore, we must act urgently to address the twin food and climate crisis, and you will agree with me that failure is not an option, and time is not on our side. And that is where the acceleration part in the Icra acronym comes in. Accelerating the rollout and scaling of what we already know to work well to bolster food security must be our priority. African institutions are establishing compelling agendas for action, claiming greater ownership and urgency in setting the priorities for investment and projects that deliver a climate-smart future. Take, for example, the newly ratified African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan. But the support of the institutions like the World Bank and research partnerships such as the CGR has, can, and must continue to play a critical role in meeting the challenge we face. As a former staff of the CGR, I know what the wealth of technologies is in that community. And now that I'm on the side of the NAS through the regional organization, I can only hope that there is an acceleration in making the technologies available in the CG to get into the hands of the system like mine and others across Africa. CGR has developed groundbreaking innovation for the last 5 decades, and this was done through partnerships. But we must better connect the science and research of CGR with the agendas of African institutions like CORAF and other regional research associations in Africa. As such, I would like to take this opportunity to express my personal satisfaction for the successful collaboration between CORAF and ICRA. Together, we are increasing the resilience of millions of farmers in Africa through the implementation of climate-smart agricultural practices and technologies while promoting the use of climate information services. We're also strengthening institutional and human capacities of the organizations in the region. I am thrilled to share with you today just some examples of collaborative work together. I will just stop at one because there are so many of them. The one I would like to cite is that CORAF backstopped the design of the World Bank's West Africa Food System Resilience Program. We invited input from CGR climate research community in this process, connecting science with policy while exploring synergies for scaling. When the time comes to look back, I am convinced that we will all be able to confidently say that Icra research outputs have benefited stakeholders and partners across the 23 West and Central Africa countries where CORAF works. As Executive Director of CORAF, I'm really thrilled to see how these more than potential outcomes from our partnership with Icra as they benefit smallholder farmers and livestock keepers in sub-Saharan Africa. As Icra name suggests, our unique partnership is about accelerating impact and progress, and that would be our main goal. Critical support from International Development Association funds pass through well-established CGR research centers in Icra's 6 focus countries in Africa, but there is a high potential for spillover from these 6 countries. As they do, they activate unique science-driven partnerships that draw in the public and private sectors, as well as civil society. This unique and groundbreaking mode of working together really connects the dots in linking science, policy, and action. This new working ensures IDA funds really strengthen African organizations to sustainably respond to climate challenges both now and in the future. As a result, it is my belief that ICRA must play a strategic role supporting and building the capacity of West African centers of excellence for climate action and food security. Letters from high-level representatives drawn from government ministries, universities, national meteorological agencies, national agricultural research centers, as well as from regional institutions like CORAF, provide crystal clear testament to the impact of ICRA. I will not go into details of those letters. I will just say that they demonstrate clearly not only how ICRA supports the agenda and priorities of this organization, but additionally how funds from IDA support is reaching these national climate action champions more effectively, precisely because of the partnership with ICRA. From my experience, this is the case in ICRA's 6 focus countries. Of course, our new way of working with ICRA is not happening in a vacuum. Something existed before, something will exist after, but the acceleration of availing technologies also is accelerating the partnerships, and that is a very good thing. These changes under CGR's ways of working to remain relevant in the face of contemporary challenges and ensure its work has huge impact for decades to come. It is my personal view then that ICRA's partnership model is one that could inspire the one CGR as it is undergoing some reforms. And I've already said this at many occasions. Perhaps I should stress one thing. It's my strong wish to see our successful collaboration with Icra and the World Bank continue and grow in the years ahead, with more resources earmarked for regional institutions in future iteration or evolution of programs like Icra. This is especially the case given the commencement of the decade-long World Bank-led FSRP projects. Countries are receiving support. They can acquire technology from Icra brokered partnerships, and that can help us to reach our goals faster. With such backing, our joint effort can really make strides in addressing the root causes of persistent food insecurity in Africa, tackle deep structural challenges, and ultimately make us better prepared for food security crisis of the future. I would like to end with perhaps a dream. These remarks have largely focused on the adaptation part, which has its own dose of mitigation, but the world has awakened to the need of accelerating mitigation deliberately, consistently, and massively. It is then possible to dream that when we collectively succeed in so doing, that we perhaps could reverse climate change. However, regardless, we would do well to stay awake.
Reach the mobile number for Paul Cook. Please leave a message.
The impact of CGR climate research in Africa. And with this, I would like to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor, for your keynote speech. I think it sets us in the right mood. And I mean, why not dream? We will dream together. And I think it's not so far-fetched as a dream once we have the vision and the partners. And as you mentioned, this combination of policy and research and action these are the ingredients. Thank you very much for outlining the challenges, very clear, and for sharing with us, experience of your personal journey. Thank you also for all the support to help us on the FSRP project. Very, very good starting point. Thank you so much. So with that, we're going to move along our program, and we're going to have 2 pre-recorded video messages from Ernest Afiesimama. He's a regional program manager from the World Meteorological Organization, the regional office for Africa, and then followed by a video address from Edson Nkonde. He's director of the Zambia Meteorological Department, and I think the team will play it from your end, EDC.
Thank you. Please stand by.
I'm Dr. Ernest Afiesimama, Program Manager, World Meteorological Organization, Regional Office for Africa in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I'm speaking to you to attest the excellent relationship and collaboration between the Accelerating Impacts of CIGA Climate Research for Africa, ICRA, project funded by the International Development Association grant of the World Bank, towards making climate information services and climate smart agriculture more accessible to millions of smallholder farmers and livestock keepers across Africa with WMO Regional Office. The relationship between AICCRA and WMO Regional Office is unique and extremely beneficial to IGAD and SADC member states of AU. And I just want to highlight some of the key areas of collaboration. 1, strengthening Africa's national meteorological and hydrological services, real-time weather forecasting and monitoring capacity, improving dissemination of seasonal and sub-seasonal weather forecasting and life-saving early warnings to millions of smallholder farmers and livestock keepers in Africa, co-developing and operationalizing extreme weather events relating to flash flood forecasting to build the capacity of regional and national disaster risk managers centers to minimize social, economic, and environmental impacts in Africa. Co-developing and implementing harmonized national framework for weather, water, and climate services by incorporating science-based climate information into decision and policy-making processes in Africa, including supporting national adaptation plan, co-developing annual state of the climate report in Africa, now which promotes a snapshot of climate trends, observed high-impact extreme events, and associated risks and impacts on key socioeconomic sectors of Africa to policymakers in agriculture and food security, building the capacity of Eastern and Western African climate prediction centers. Now, you are aware that many African countries are prone to extreme weather and climate events, such as frequent floods and droughts. I sincerely believe that the WMO Regional Office partnership with Icra will undoubtedly contribute to the incorporation of better weather and climate risk management into agriculture and food security policies and strategies, and enormously improve the adaptive capacity of African member states. I would like to appreciate the World Bank for enabling this unique and the first of its type partnership between SIGA and WMO Regional Office through Icra, and I can confidently provide a testament that through this partnership, many African NMHSs will be able to provide better climate information services, including short, medium, subseasonal, and seasonal forecast to the millions of smallholder farmers and livestock keepers to enhance their resilience and adaptive capacity, and also support Africa policymakers in Eastern and Southern African regions to make more data-driven and objective climate action, including early warning and early actions to enhance the resilience of the region. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, the next one is coming up.
So the mission of the Zambia Meteorological Department is to provide accurate, reliable, high-quality weather and climate services that are tailored for sectors and communities across Zambia. The partnership with Icra, we are looking at strengthening the generation and also the provision of weather and climate information, as well as other early warning information that are related to weather and climate, to different sectors, communities, but more especially the smallholder farmers. So the challenges that exist in the provision of weather and climate services are the inadequate observation infrastructure. The other aspect is the capacity to model the data, to generate meaningful information, to generate climate services that are tailored for the farmers on the ground. So we are developing, for example, platforms like the Agricultural Data Hub, where we are bringing agricultural data sets as well as climate data sets so that we can understand, because it's from the data that we can understand how the climate is changing in different locations, how it's impacting the agricultural productivity. This Agricultural Data Hub will be a resource not only for us as the Meteorological Department, but for the agricultural sector as well, but also for researchers, because they will now be able to make sense and understand how the impacts have been in terms of the climate impacting agricultural productivity. Because we believe that for us to transform the agricultural productivity, for us to strengthen the production in the agricultural sector, we have to start with the weather, strengthening the weather and climate services that are provided. So one aspect that we are looking at is to expand our observation infrastructure so that we understand what is happening in the local communities in terms of how the weather is changing, how it's impacting their livelihoods. We expand our observation infrastructure, we will strengthen the accuracy, we will strengthen the quality, but we will also ensure that we are able to tailor those services, the climate services, to the farmer on the ground, so that we support the farmer to be very productive. We support the farmer to protect the environment. We support that farmer to take his or her children to school, because they'll be more productive. They'll understand how the weather is going to impact them, and therefore they will become more resilient to the impacts of climate change.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we'll go back to the room in DC, and it's my pleasure now to welcome Dr. Ana Maria Loboguerrero. She's the director of ICRA and the Global Research Director of Climate Action for the Alliance of Biodiversity International and International Center for Tropical Agriculture. She has a dense, rich experience working on climate change challenges. She also worked as an external expert panel member for the evaluation of the FAO work in climate change mitigation and adaptation. So Doctor, the floor is yours, and we're eager to learn more about ICRA impact and lessons.
So who will be passing my slides?
Reese will do it.
Reese will do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's really exciting to be here presenting the results so far of the implementation of this project. And let me start by saying that even though I'm delivering this presentation, I'm speaking on the behalf of the many hundreds of partners, scientists, policymakers, universities that are working with us in terms of making this happen. And as Dr. Tinkuano was saying, that are making possible to dream about this. Reese, if you could go to my next slide, please. So Dr. Tinkuano has been saying in a very nice way the challenge that we are facing. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in terms of giving a rationale of the importance of ICRA. We all know the numbers, but perhaps what I would like to emphasize is that there's also a lot of momentum in terms of governments at the national, regional, continental level of putting this agenda into programs, reports, finance, plans, etc. This is good news, and this is obviously helping us to move forward in this agenda. Bad news is that, as has been mentioned already, we need to accelerate the pace. Reese, if you go to my next slide, if we see the targets that were set through the Malabo Declaration back in 2014, well, what the documents say is that we are not on track to meet those ambitious targets, and therefore we need to accelerate the pace. So given that back in 2019, and this is more going into the origins of ICRA, how this project was born, the World Bank and relevant African institutions got together to think how to galvanize action and mobilize financing to address this issue of Africa's food security challenges in the face of climate change. As a result of this, the World Bank President David Malpass committed 60 million to support the CGR through this ICRA project that it started in January 2021. So perhaps some things to say about this strategic partnership and the decision that was made at this point. This decision of using IDA funding to support CGR, it doesn't have precedent. It's the first time that it's being done like this. But more important than that, this reflects the great support and the strong commitment of the World Bank to motivate and to push forward this kind of partnership with the CGR. Very important, this decision recognizes the key and fundamental role that research, science, and innovation play in enabling the adaptation of the African agriculture to climate change. But it also, and it's very important, I'm going to say a few words about this, it also reflects the urgency to rethink the agenda for Africa research and development through these kind of partnerships. You go to the next slide, Reese, please. So how ICRA works. And the same way in which I said that the decision of using IDA funding to support CGR is unique, and it's the first time that it's done, in the same way, this project is very atypical from a common CGR project. And it is different in the sense that ICRA, it's all about scaling. ICRA is about getting all the knowledge that the CGR through the different centers have been generated in the past 50 years in relation to climate action and putting all this knowledge and information in the hands of 1.5 million smallholder farmers in Africa. You go to the next slide, Reese, please. So part also of the uniqueness of ICRA is the way that we operate, the way that we are structured, and we believe that this is the way to really reach scales. So in Africa, we have 6 teams working on each one of the focus countries of ICRA. We are working in Senegal, in Ghana, Mali, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Zambia. And this is work that we are doing with national African organizations in terms of implementing activities. But at the same time, parallel to this, we have 2 regional teams focusing, one in West Africa and the other one in East and Southern Africa. And the idea is that these teams are working hand by hand with sub-regional African organizations. But at the same time, we have 4 thematic teams in ICRA. One, generating knowledge in relation to policies and institutions. We have highlighted the importance of policy. Another one on climate smart agricultural technologies and practices. A third on gender and social inclusion. And a fourth on climate information services. And they backstop in terms of, under this arrangement, giving the right type of information to generate innovation. This structure has helped us a lot in terms of being able to communicate or to engage in a dialogue along these scales, all the way from national to sub-regional to the continental scale. And we believe that this is fundamental for reaching scale. And something that I would like to see is that the spillover impacts that some people, including Dr. Tinkuano, have commented, it's part of the way of the theory of change that ICRA sees that we can be able to reach more Africans. Why? Because we implement activities on the ground in each one of these 6 countries. But through the sub-regional organizations and through the regional teams, we are able to learn from the implementation of those activities, synthesize this learning, and this knowledge goes all the way back into the continental African organizations. With that, and with the support from the thematic teams, we are able to generate more knowledge that is going down all the way to improving the activities that are we implementing in the focus ICRA countries, but going beyond that and making sure that through this process, we are able to reach farmers not only living in these 6 countries. 4 key things are part of this theory of change of the way that we work. The first one is innovative partnerships. So ICRA is all about partnerships. We believe that if we don't have the right partners in the table, if we don't empower these partners, then this resilience is never going to be able to be built. Capacity development is the second one of these. So what is the strategic capacity development that needs to happen so that all this agenda is sustainable over time? We also co-generate a lot of tailored, considering local specificities, decision support tools, and also generating knowledge in relation to unlocking finance for this agenda to move forward and to be able to contribute to formulate and implement policies that enable the environment to build this resilience and to reach scale. You could go to the next slide, Reese. So key results so far, and bear in mind that we are in the middle of the project. We started last year, January 2021. So far, as of July 22nd, ICRA has been able to support over 1 million beneficiaries. And I'm going to say some few words about the kind of innovations that we have delivered and the type of beneficiaries. But also in terms of capacity development, where I said that I was key by the end of 2022, according to our system for reporting, ICRA will have engaged around 5,500 people in capacity development activities with a very important target in terms of women and youth. Partnerships. I said that partnerships is also at the heart of what ICRA does. So we wanted to understand, how do partners perceive our work? How do they feel with the way that we are working? And in order to do that, we conduct annual surveys. So we conducted the first one, and we're very happy to receive results. More than 75% of the respondents said that they were very satisfied by the type of partnerships that Icra is engaged with, by the type of co-generation of decision-making tools and services. But also through these surveys, we wanted to assess if people were really using what Icra is producing, the innovations that we are producing. According to the survey, 61% of the respondents, just in the first year of implementation of Icra, are already using our products and services for the decision-making processes. If you go to the next slide and then to the following risk. Okay. So some kind of the innovations that Icra has been able to
اديها زي ما زمان كنت بتديها على قفاها اديها. وحد يقدر يقول لك حاجه هنا؟ اللي ما يعجبكيش اديله على قفاه على طول.
Can you please mute?
Okay. So no problem. So a little bit flavor of the type of innovations, and I'm not going to go into details, and this is not a comprehensive list at all. We have in our video report a lot of details in relation to this. I encourage all of you to look at this. But for instance, in Zambia, we are doing something that is really interesting in terms of backstopping from a technical perspective and matchmaking mechanisms, engaging in this Accelerator Program, where we are already supporting 13 businesses to reach 300,000 farmers with climate-smart agriculture and climate information services bundled. I'm not going to say more about this because the presentation that is going to follow me, we're going to hear from the people that really are implementing this on the ground. This is really exciting. But to give you another example, Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, we have been working with policymakers at the Ministry of Agriculture, with the Ethiopian Met Office, with the National Disaster Risk Management Commission, and by working with them and by using this next-gen tool, we have co-developed this agricultural drought monitoring and warning system, which potentially can reach 18 million farmers in Ethiopia. Go to the next one, Reese. In Ghana, we have learned that one of the key issues are these climate-driven pests and diseases. We are already working with a lot of partners at the national level in order to co-develop this One Health platform for addressing this issue, and we're already seeing results in terms of reducing crop losses. In Mali, to give you another example, in Mali, we are working through personalized recommendations for crop calendars, and using this Rice Advice app that was developed through Icra, we have been able to already help 17,000 farmers in Mali to manage climate risk in relation to rice. Go to the next one, Chris. A little bit in terms of the spillover impacts, because we believe that this is one of the innovations of Icra. So there was already mentioned this idea of the collaboration that has already happened in relation to the World Bank's West Africa Food Systems Resilience Program. We see a lot of potential in this, but it's already happening. We are embedded the innovations and the knowledge that Icra is generating into the implementation of the FSRP, and we see more opportunities to come. Already we can document outcomes, including capacity building for regional climate centers, including joint financing for PhD African students, and included the development of digital platforms for climate smart agriculture. At the continental reach, also many things happening in terms of spillover impacts, including the enhanced capacity of ICPAC and AgriMed in terms of their climate prediction, but also something that was mentioned by Dr. Tenkuano, how we supported the African Union Commission to co-develop its climate change and resilient development strategy and action plan. You go to my last slide, Reese. I will just finish with this, and this is about lessons learned from the 1.5 year implementation of Icra, and we're very happy to, we wrote about these lessons learned, and this was published in Environmental Research Climate 2 weeks ago, and it's very much the way that we have been operating in Icra. We really believe that through Icra research and non-research African partners, we have been able to successfully engage in this in this environment where flexibility, thinking about multi-sectoral approaches and long-term planning have been the key for really the work that we are implementing on the ground. And just to emphasize the importance of these inter- and transdisciplinary approaches that we are using in Icra in the implementation of activities, where technological innovations and interventions are very important. And those are the ones that we are bringing from 50 years of knowledge of CGR. But I think that what's really innovative about ICRA is understanding and doing research on how these technological innovations or interventions are interacting with social, institutional, governance environments, which we believe that are the drivers of this transformative process. Last slide, Reese. Thank you very much for your attention, and we really are looking forward to continue the collaboration through ICRA and to continue dreaming. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very clear presentation, clear messages. You know, the theory of change, I think it's very nicely presented. And, you know, as you mentioned, it's the twin objective of acceleration and scale. Very good examples and very promising early results, very good results. And of course, you know, the idea is, you know, how do we get more of these into more projects? So thank you so much, Doctor, for the presentation. You mentioned the Zambia example, so we have an opportunity now to have a deeper dive into the Zambia Accelerator with two speakers from the International Water Management Institute. This is an Icra partner organization. We're delighted to hear from Hauke Dahl and from Inga Jacobs-Mata. And I think both of them are connected. So thank you so much for connecting and sharing the lessons from the Zambia Accelerator example. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Program Director, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Delighted to share with you some of our experience in Zambia around this Accelerator program. Hauke, I will ask to do this presentation with me, and he will introduce himself in a minute. But I'm Inga Jacobs-Mata. I work for the International Water Management Institute as part of the CGIAR, heading up the Southern Africa offices in South Africa, Zambia, and hopefully soon also Zimbabwe. Hauke and I, we work on the activities in Zambia, and we have so far really interesting models, partnership models that we are piloting under this. But before I share a little bit about that, I want to maybe ask you, if I was there with you, I would get some inputs, but because I'm sitting in South Africa at the moment, I will ask the question and then answer it. But I'd like you to reflect on what a fintech startup, a digital ag tech platform, and a solar energy pump provider have in common. Because these are some of the SMEs that we support under the Icra Zambia Accelerator. They are basically equipping hundreds of thousands of smallholder farmers to cope with impacts of climate change, which in Zambia threaten to reduce water availability in Zambia by as much as 13% by 2050, and shedding GDP in that country by 4%. They are some of the most innovative companies in Zambia at the moment, and they have committed to pre-financing hundreds of off-grid irrigation pumps, to selling and distributing even more pumps to farmers on a pay-as-you-go payment plan, and then connecting hundreds of thousands more farmers into digital agro-advisories, so 5-day forecast, so that farmers can stay one step ahead of the now frequent unpredictable rains and water supply. Reese, you can put the next slide, please. So we really hope that these are some of the partnerships that, in fact, can be profiled and interrogated more. But what we did over the past year and a half, thank you, you can leave it on this slide, was to develop an accelerator program that is all about bundling partners, but also bundling innovation, bundling climate smart agriculture with climate information services. And we co-designed this with partners in Zambia, so it was very much a bottom-up process, and specifically with our SMEs in Zambia. And we currently engage with over 350 agri SMEs in Zambia at the moment. These were then refined and put into a call, which Hauke will talk to in a minute. But basically, just to quickly summarize them, the sustainable financing for off-grid solar irrigation, which is the one that I just shared, the example. A second bundle was around integrated aquaculture agriculture systems. So this was everything from fish feed, fingerlings, production, all the way to distribution. Third bundle then focused on addressing drought through climate smart seed varieties, and this was looking at drought tolerant seeds and nutrition absorption enhancers in value chains like groundnut, soybean, maize, as well as providing extension support on the best agronomic practices. The fourth bundle looked at diversified, integrated agriculture, small ruminant cropping practices as well. And the interesting thing about this model was that it was bringing together many farmer cooperatives. The fifth bundle that we then added in was that we wanted to have a best in class for gender and social inclusion. So that meant that the partnerships that we solicited could respond to any of the first four bundles, but they needed to really be a step ahead, have an edge on empowering women and youth. And if you know Zambia, you'll know that about 70% of the population is under 30. So really, you know, nothing can get done without youth in Zambia. Thanks. The next slide, please. And so what we did, as I said before, this was really a very iterative co-design process with a whole series of info sessions with SMEs, followed by some matchmaking dialogues, because what we found was even though agribusinesses knew each other, they didn't really know how to partner and who to partner with. And so this was a really critical step in the accelerator evolution. And then we launched the call last year. We evaluated it, and then this year in February we onboarded our first cohort. So with that, I'm now going to hand it over to not yet. Sorry, the next slide, please. Sorry, Hauke. In terms of that first cohort that we supporting, we provided basically two areas of support. The first was a scaling grant, where we gave where we awarded successful partnerships $50,000 of scaling grant, and then the second support was technical assistance, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Thank you. The next slide. Now, if you think about it, we were trying to reach 300,000 beneficiaries in the next 2 years. And at 50,000 per bundle, each one reaching about 75,000 farmers, that's less than $1 a farmer. So this was an ambitious target. We realized that, but that is why the partnerships were so important, because while each agribusiness had their client base and could reach between tens of thousands and maybe 100,000 farmers, their partnership was what really set them ahead and prepared them to be able to deliver on these ambitious targets. Thank you. The next slide. So now I'm going to hand it over to Hauke to take us through the process for the accelerator. Hauke, over to you, please.
That's great. Thank you so much, Inga and Anna Maria, and hello everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I hope I'm audible. My name is Hauke. I'm joining you from South Africa. I work as a scaling expert at the International Water Management Institute, and I'm also in the lead for the Accelerator Program under Icra Zambia. I'm going to go a little bit into the methodology of the approach that we're running. Also go into a deep dive of our value proposition, and then report a little bit on our progress that we've achieved over the last 6 months with our accelerator partners, as we call them. Next slide, please. So what you can see here is a 4-phase model that we're executing. So as Inga already mentioned, we've bundled innovations out of the CGI, our research portfolio, in a demand-driven way. We've done a market analysis, and we've spoken to over 300 SMEs to see if they actually fit the market needs, and we've stress tested them. and through a very competitive call for applications, we've onboarded a portfolio of high-performing agribusinesses. So we've completed the innovation bundling and the partner sourcing phase, essentially. Next slide, please. We're now in the process of acceleration. We are dispersing our $50,000 US in grants, but we're also providing tailor-made technical assistance. I'll get into that in more detail in a minute. What we're also doing parallelly now is investor pooling, because the next step that we have with our portfolio is providing access to finance. You can go ahead with the next slide. We want to understand what impact investors want, so we can leverage the 50,000 of de-risking grant essentially as a first loss guarantee for further private investments, especially from the Impact Investment Center. Apologies, I do hear a little bit of background noise from Hauke, I think. Maybe you can mute yourself. Thanks. So right, what we want to provide is access to finance. How do we do that? We participate in investment summons and such to provide our portfolio the opportunity to present themselves and their projects to a wide portfolio of investors, which we're parallelly also trying to understand what they want, what is their risk appetite, and so on. On the rightmost side, you can see that we're also trying to integrate this linear process into a hub model. Icra is not the only project where we're driving an innovative approach in gathering SMEs, startups, and investors across East and Southern Africa. We really want to create economies of scale through network development and ecosystem support. So we actually have become a household name when it comes to scaling digital and physical agriculture innovation in the region. Yeah, next slide, please. So, right, here you can see this was taken in February after our call for applications. That's Inga and myself in the middle. We've onboarded a portfolio of 14 Zambian agribusinesses, and we call them Accelerators partners now. And now let me talk a little bit about what happened since February. Next slide, please. So, what is it that we provide in this Accelerator program? How does it work? The first pillar of our three-pillar value proposition is we provide scientific excellence. Now, you've come to understand that we're a very diverse team of scientists from countless disciplines, and we provide bundle-specific technical assistance and advisory on aquaculture, on seed and genetics, on off-grid solar irrigation, and so on. This is a capacity that we provide in-house because it's our bread and butter. We also have a little bit of cross innovation services that we provide that tailor to scaling climate smart agriculture. For instance, how do we integrate the dissemination of climate information services or the consideration of gender and social inclusion aspects into strategy development. Next slide, please. Now, the second service that we provide is investment readiness, because we understand that these SMEs, they exist in the market and can provide innovations, but they're really hesitant to scale these innovations because of the market environment. Zambia has suffered droughts, recession, and most recently, obviously, COVID, and everybody is in a very tight space, and there's not a lot of room for exploration and long-term revenue generating projects. So we provide investment readiness together with our partner Open Capital Advisors, a leading African management consultancy based out of Nairobi, Kenya, and they provide proper business development services like the development of pitch decks, business plans, scaling models, ultimately making our portfolio more investment ready and increasing the likelihood of investment for investors. Next slide, please. And the third thing that we provide now is impact measurement. Yeah, obviously we're well equipped through our complex monitoring and evaluation methodologies to analyze climate smart agriculture along those three pillars on a national, regional, SME and on a farm level to report our impact. But in this case, we take it a step further and we say we want to tie the quantified science-based evidence for sustainability impact into the narrative of investment readiness. So as an investor, I have the opportunity to say, okay, for every dollar invested, I create, X social or environmental benefits, in additional outputs alongside my financial returns. Okay. That's a lot of theory. Thanks for bearing with me. I'll take it a little bit more to a practical example and answer the question that Inga posed with respect to what does a financial service provider, an off-grid solar irrigation provider, and a tech startup for market prices have in common. So this is one of the bundles that applied. Yeah, we have Future Pump, which a company that produces off-grid solar irrigation pumps. So for those in the audience who don't know, off-grid solar irrigation pumps are an absolute game changer for a smallholder farmer because they allow to switch from rain-fed to irrigated agriculture, reducing effort and tripling yields. The only issue here, obviously, the investment threshold from somebody who earns between $2 and $12 per day is prohibitively high, which is why this partnership conglomerate got together and developed a pay-as-you-go model, including a loan facility that allows to cater to previously unbanked target groups such as smallholder farmers. And LimaLinks in this case is a market outreach provider that works with USSD technology to reach currently over 120,000 active farmers by providing them with market price data on legumes and other farm outputs, but also gathering information from them with respect to what gender, what crops, what region, what household income. So just a couple of days ago, their market assessment came back in with us where they really were able to quantify that there's a massive market demand in Zambia for technologies and services like this, which we can use as the evidence base for investors. Right. And now a little bit further down the line, next slide, please. We have here something that is very dear to my heart as somebody who spent a lot of time in startups and strategy consulting. This is an output from our management consultancy, Open Capital, which showcases the partnership model. Yeah, I just want to show this as a case study. You can see here clearly on the left side, LimaLinks, Lupia, and Vitalight, they work together in a partnership along different kinds of value-added services that they provide. We've identified areas for investment. We've identified pain points and bottlenecks, and this is something that really strengthens their partnership model and allows us to develop further strategies. Okay, again, a lot of theoretical background here. Next slide, please. Now, last week I was in Zambia, and we participated in the Zambian Impact Investment Summit. And it was a very exciting event where we had a wide range of national and international investors from all over the world coming together and expressing an interest in sustainable investments in Zambia. We had a lot of ecosystem enablers as well, ourselves, the GIZ, a lot of other different projects. And we had a strong portfolio of sustainable companies there, and agriculture was obviously a big part of that. I was quite nervous walking in there because as a science organization, this is not necessarily territory that we venture into, but we have understood over the last couple of months, and especially last week, that we're striking interest here with our value proposition of a science-driven accelerator program for climate-smart agribusinesses. So you can see here our portfolio. We've prepared, as you can see on the left side, an investor deal book. Unfortunately, I only have one more hard copy left. But I'll pop in my email in the chat. I'd be happy to send you a digital one. It includes our approach, an overview of our portfolio, as well as the investment asks. On the right side is the CEO of Lupia, our financial services company, pitching to a crowd of investors. Thanks. And now I want to end just with a couple of pictures which tell a very exciting story. One of our media companies has just completed a field trip, and here, for instance, you can see that LimaLinks is providing real-time market price data through USSD technology, so it's they can reach non-smartphone users, and where mobile penetration hasn't reached yet. So to make it more inclusive, they can reach real-time market price data while they're on the field, which enables access to finance and, more importantly, access to market. Next slide. We have Plant Catalyst, a bioorganic fertilizer company that's working with us to scale seed and fertilizer, and they're actually using climate smart agriculture capacity building services as a marketing tool. Here we see Komaku, one of the larger SMEs in our portfolio, and they're including female farmers through capacity building measures into formalized economic and financial value chains by driving their cooperative model that we're supporting. Great. So much for our program. Thank you very much for listening. And back to the audience. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. This is really exciting. And now I understand better what Katie said. You know, I'm very excited about this part of the program. A lot of exciting work, and I think the startup community in agriculture is a very important one because, you know, the innovation is amazing. And, you know, once we have the foundations, good connectivity, and, you know, you have the youth there, the ideas are not missing, and, you know, the support through research and science, and, you know, supporting the funding. I think it's really an exciting program. So thank you so much for sharing. You know, I like the idea of this bundling of the approach. I think it will help us go faster, and the you know, the focus on the inclusion. It's an important one for, you know, youth and gender, and also the inclusion in terms of technology. So for those, you know, SMEs and parts of the countries where, you know, we cannot still talk about broadband, there is also, you know, a technology solution for them. So we'll be keen to stay in touch with you know, those support to the Accelerator program, and, you know, as they go through, you know, the experience, you know, what happens after the acceleration. So please keep watching them and reporting on the success. Very good, very good. So I think we got to the point of the program where we're gonna open it for discussion, and I want to thank you know, the audience for listening in during the first part of the program. And again, really big thank you to all the presenters for the great presentations. So as we start the discussion part, we're going to start it with you know, giving the floor to 3 discussants for their feedback, their reaction to what they heard, their own ideas on the topic. And we're going to hear from John Lynam. He's the chair of Icra Independent Steering Committee. We'll hear first from you, John, and then we'll go to Chakib. Chakib is our practice manager for agriculture and food. And then we'll hear from Katie, senior agriculture economist and TTL of many of the projects that we heard today. So why don't we start with you, John? Please give us your feedback to what you heard.
Boutheina, I think John is having a technical issue connecting, so we maybe can start with Chakib and we'll try to get John connected.
Perfect.
Very good.
So thank you, Boutheina, and thanks for taking the time to be with us today in this meeting. Thanks to the presenters for the various excellent presentation, and also for setting the stage for our discussion. Let me maybe highlight few numbers. I think the first one, if I take West Africa, food insecurity has started since 2014, where we have seen declining numbers, or I mean increasing numbers of food insecure people from 9 million in 2014 to today 40 million. So of course we can talk about climate change, conflict, we can talk also about natural resources degradation, but clearly we are doing something wrong in terms of keeping up with the challenges that are facing the region. Second element, we know that Africa will be impacted highly with climate change, and the 3-degree warning trajectory will cause catastrophic impact to Africa food system. Some numbers, 3% increase will lead to losses of up to 30%, for example, of maize. So that's a huge number if we look at that. Now, we have estimated that financing towards adaptation to climate change will cost some 14 billion. But the cost of inaction is around 201 billion. So clearly investing in programs like Icra, bringing this partnership, accelerating innovation and accelerating technology the farmers and to the end user is key. Are we doing enough? I don't believe so. I think if we see the needs, I mean, I'm talking now of about 14 billion just for our adaptation. If I count all the money that we are spending, maybe here and there, it's just a drop into the big ocean. So there are quite a lot of things we can do now. We look at Icra is focusing on 6 countries, but we can see today there is huge spillover to the regions. For me, it was great to see Dr. Tinkuano here with us, meaning that we are not only focusing on the CGS centers, but also bringing on board the regional research centers. The bank has been working for more than 10 years or 15 years now with the CORAF. And CORAF has been growing quite a lot. I had the pleasure to visit them just recently. Their work under a previous work project, WAP, West Africa Agriculture Productivity Program, has achieved a lot, have trained more than 2,000 master PhDs, has also reached some 46 million farmers, if my numbers are correct. So clearly now adding the CGS centers into the picture, building this strong partnership will help us move more and have more impact in terms of science and innovation and technology in the field. Maybe a final, I would say, comment from my side. We need to do more reaching the farmers. And Icra is piloting a number of technologies and the numbers of other, I would say, like seeds, that maybe it's not bringing the private sector a lot in the picture, and it stays at the pilot stage. So we need CORAF, and I think we discussed the same in Senegal. We need to go to more scale. And one of the options that I can put more concretely, and what we are doing with the food system resilience operation, CORAF is part of the implementation, I would say, agencies of the program. So we need to do more with other programs that we have in West and also East Africa, where we can bring in the CG centers also as part of the implementing agencies that can intervene directly in the project implementation. We have cases like in Burundi for the rice, and this is something that we need to look at more closely. Let me stop here and back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Chakib. So let me check, Katie, is John connected or not yet?
John is connected, yes. John, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We hear you very well. Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
And that's my video. So, well, I won't put that on while I talk. Mistakes, where to draw the boundary between research and development. There has been research on this issue, as reflected by the work of William Clark at Harvard and colleagues at Icra, as you can see in the source on this slide. Research on managing boundary conditions, however, has not focused on the institutional arrangements that make for an effective flow of knowledge and techniques. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Over CG's history, there has been an increasing complexity in institutional arrangements as the number of strategic objectives has increased. The current reform focuses on food systems and adds institutions working on food distribution to those working on production, natural resource management, and consumption. as were added during the course of the sort of the history of the CG. Work on adaptation to climate change has a complex of institutional arrangements involving agriculture, natural resource management, land use, and the climate community. The question is how to manage this complexity. Next slide, please. Next. Oh, no, sorry, back, sorry. Back one. An example of the difficulty in developing a stable institutional architecture is the changing emphasis given to regional approaches. From a strong regional architecture at the turn of the century, changes in donor priorities and changes in funding flows, resulting in the move of the CG much more downstream, as well as weak institutional arrangements and often a competitive search for funding with other regional institutions. With the move to the institutional complexity of food systems, is it time to rethink regional approaches? And I must say that the World Bank has been one of the few donors to continue to work within a regional framework, as compared to certainly the bilateral donors who have moved to country priorities. So last slide, please. So inherent in the design of ICRA is a framework for organizing and testing institutional arrangements around adaptation to climate change at a country and at regional levels in Africa, as seen in sort of the 5 areas I identify here in this slide. And I suppose the final question then is ICRA an evolving model for the CGIAR as it organizes around food systems in sub-Saharan Africa? So I think that's my five minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And so thanks to Chakib. I think first, you know, the cost of inaction, that's a strong message. So, and the importance of, you know, scale. I think the point also around the private sector and how we can get more, you know, role of the private sector in this. These are great points, Chakib. Thank you. And then, John, the question around the complexity of the institutional arrangement. I think you put it clearly there, front and center. How do we think, learning from the experience, you know, what would be, you know, the rethinking about the regional approaches? And as you mentioned, from the bank side, I mean, this is really one of the sectors where we think that, you know, if we really want an acceleration and if we really want to scale, you know, the country by country approach, you know, could be a slower approach towards the dream that Dr. Tinkuano mentioned. And so we're very keen, you know, on the regional approaches. And so the thinking around the whole complexity of the institutional arrangement, I think it's a very, very good point. And I think your question at the end is a great one. And maybe we get, you know, feedback from the team as we get to the discussion. So I'm going to ask Katie. She is our last discussant. And then after that, we're going to open it for, you know, reaction from the audience. Katie, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Boutheina. I will be extremely fast because we want to get onto the discussion portion, but just wanted to thank everyone for being here. I'm going to say 3 things very quickly. The first is just as an operational TTL, Boutheina noted I am leading from the bank side the Icra program, but also the Food Systems Resilience Program, which has been mentioned several times. Wanted to stress the importance of what ICCRA is doing to directly inform some of our operations. And this is not new to our operations in the bank, right? So the CGIAR as a group has long informed what we do in terms of research, science, technology, and we have, in our best moments, taken what they're doing and tried to translate them into operations and into actions on the ground with our clients. So just to say that the ICRA program has done this so far already in the FSRP program and has the potential to do this in more programs throughout. I wanted to say, secondly, and Anna Maria mentioned this at the beginning, that this is a mechanism that's never been used before, right? So we have always had a line item in the budget of the bank where we have funded the CGIAR because of the importance of the work that they do to the work that we do. But this is the first time we've actually had a mechanism whereby the World Bank team is engaged with a team dedicated to support the CGIAR centers in Africa. And from my perspective, and given it is a biased one as the task team leader of this program, but we'll say that it's been a really close way of interacting and a more way to fully integrate the research and innovation in our portfolios. And also, I think it's created a deeper understanding and a more open door to continue to strengthen this very long-standing partnerships between the World Bank and the CGIAR. My last point is that the world is not on track to achieve zero hunger by 2030. If recent trends continue, the projections are that nearly 670 million people will still be facing hunger, or the equivalent to 8% of the world's population by 2030. At the same time, we are not on track to achieve the NDCs, right? So the nationally determined contributions, we are also not on track to achieve those. And when we talk about achieving NDCs, and particularly in the run-up to this COP, which will happen in November, there is a call from global partners to change the way that we are doing agriculture fundamentally. And the digital climate services that we heard about today, the Accelerator program we heard about today, seems to me the foundation of what we need to be able to do this. So the Zambia Accelerator is providing solar acceleration packages, including solar irrigation. And we've seen from lessons in other countries that any country needs this type of accelerator to be able to have these type of technologies. I live in Washington, D.C. I have solar on my house, and I got an accelerator grant from the D.C. government in order to do it, right? So we're not just talking about the type of programs that are useful in Zambia or in Senegal or in Ghana, but these are the types of things that we need to fundamentally change agriculture in general. And some of the activities we've heard today seem not just to be best practices for ICRA countries, but perhaps the reimagination and possibility of a dream, to take Dr. Tenkouano's words, of agriculture. And leading up to COP in November, it seems that all countries of all income levels could learn something from a reimagination or a dream of reimagining or re-envisioning agriculture in the way that ICRA is doing it. So I will stop there, thank you, and we should open up the discussion.
Very good, thank you so much, thank you. So let's open it to discussion questions. We have over 50 participants in WebEx, and we have, the participants in DC. Please, raise your hand. Also, any reaction from the speakers to what you heard from others, please go ahead. We have 9 minutes left.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks, Boutheina. I have a question for Anna Maria. Anna Maria, you mentioned that how atypical is the ICRA project also for the CGIAR, not for the bank. And knowing how many years the CGIAR is working and is actually sitting with its centers in so many African countries, and how many partnerships they have been going on with African institutions for years, I would like to hear more from you. What do you see that the ICRA is doing different from the past? And what has been, you mentioned, for example, the issue of scale. And we all want ICRA to be a game changer. And you mentioned some examples how this is happening. So if you could please help us understand a bit more on this. and also a bit on the perceptions that Icra has helped to change within the CGIAR system. We have also Lorraine sitting with us today, who is seconded from the bank to the CGIAR now to help this kind of links happening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ernest, for that question. So, so I think that Icra is unique because Icra, it's, as I mentioned, and you mentioned, it's scaling. So what we are interested here in is in scaling. And the research that we are generating, which is not usually the research that we generate through our CGIAR centers, it's in relation to how that scaling happens. And we have so many cases of the CGIAR developing technologies that on the laboratories, they look fantastic. And we believe, and I can say, I believe, because I have been also part of that, that we are going to solve the world with that. Surprise, we come into the field. No, it doesn't work. The farmers do not want to use them. And many times it's because obviously these technologies do not happen in a vacuum. So there are a lot of contexts that make this scaling happen or not. And I think that we are still lacking a lot of research in relation to how do those local contexts interact with these technologies. And that was something that we tried to do through the Climate Smart Villages, to really understand those interactions. And then from those understanding, trying to see how and under which circumstances these technologies needed to change. Moreover, I would say it's through this research changing the developing of these technologies. So the technologies are not necessarily are the same given the context where they are going to be implemented. And this needs to be addressed from the very beginning of the development of these technologies. And I'm not saying that the CGIAR has not done this at all in the past, but this is not the core, if you could say, the core research that we scientists at the CGIAR used to do. So I think in that way, it's very innovative, really, and connecting then this concept of bundling. So here we are bundling climate information with climate smart agriculture, but also, and John mentioned that, understanding governance structures. How do they interact with these technologies to be able to scale? Being very serious about gender, not only collecting data in relation to gender, because that's a lot that we have been doing with CGIAR in the past, but also really understanding how dynamics in relation to gender need to be taken into account for this successful scaling to happen. So I think that all that institutional environment that sometimes we disregard is what Icra is really giving us the opportunity to do. And just to mention, you asked about an example. So there was a paper, and I don't know if Jim Hansen is on the call, but there was a paper that Jim led that was published recently. It was so interesting, trying to understand from the perspectives of the 6 countries in Icra, the history in terms of the development of climate information and what was working and what was not. So we engaged into interviews and really analyzing and comparing. I think that history is the one that sometimes we forget, and we start implementing technologies, and this is why they don't work and don't reach scale. So I will say that.
Thank you.
Great. Let's see if we have other questions or other interventions.
Can I maybe come in, Boutheina, and maybe the question got to Anna Maria and also Dr. Tinkuano. The question, we have AICCRA now, maybe AICCRA is completing his 1 year and half. What are for you the vision in terms of sustainability, in terms of bringing ICRA to another scale? And maybe you can give your perspective from research institution on the ground and maybe from your side, from the international level.
Thank you, Chakib. I believe personally that the CG has been very successful in the past in developing islands of successes, and the point we need to make now is how do we take those islands to an extent where they would be becoming, let's say, oceans of success in a way. And I believe what we've been missing as a past CG scientist, we didn't understand that scaling is a science in itself. Mm-hmm. And I believe that is what Icra is bringing. If we want to understand scaling, and we have to look at successful scaling models. And I dare to say that COVID is an example of successful scaling. It went very fast, very viral, to use the words of the day. And basically, there were a number of ingredients. You had a very infectious agent, which would be the technologies. If we are able to have technologies that have appeal, then they will move very quickly. Then you need the connectors. It's called promiscuity or proximity, depending on what you talk about, and that has context to that. Proof is that if you isolate the people who are carrying the infection, you stop the spread of the infection and you reduce the scaling in a way. And finally, there is the fact that it has to be done in several places at the same time for an impact to happen. And that's where I would say that Icra has a very innovative model, but if it has to work only in countries and miss the opportunity of connecting to the regions, you would end up one day, or we would end up one day with only islands of successes. So we can do a lot more. And the last thing perhaps is that the resources may be, they are important, but I think one needs to also do the bundling of resources using other donors so that there is no a situation where the efforts being made at Icra are made counterproductive by efforts elsewhere. There are many initiatives that claim to be doing climate research in Africa, and I think it's time that perhaps we come together to have one program when it comes to Africa. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. So we're reaching the end, but I have two hands. I have John Luigi and then Inga. So I'm going to ask each one of you to speak for less than a minute so we can close on time. Go ahead, please. Gian.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I hope you can hear me well. I have a very general question, actually, which concerns my current work here at the bank, at the World Bank. And I would like to know what would be the implication on jobs of moving towards these new technologies, this climate smart agriculture, and especially, more specifically, I would be interested in knowing whether the adaptation of climate smart agriculture will make the agricultural system more capital intensive and therefore perhaps relocate jobs along other sector of the food system or of the farm, or whether climate smart agriculture will in a way increase the number of jobs within the agricultural sector itself. So that's a general question, and I appreciate any answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Inga, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to briefly weigh in on the question also around, what is Icra doing differently to CGIAR activities in the past, and I'm sure some of you have been following the discussions, CGIAR, African Development Bank, FARA, and other regional NAS networks in Africa around regional engagement, inclusivity, and recent declaration, or what they're calling now the Abidjan 2 commitments, was recently just published. In fact, I just recently received it. That also again draws attention to the issue of getting technologies out to farmers or product services innovations at the scale of millions of farmers. And I think that is one of the real sort of strengths of ICRA, in that there is proven case that we are reaching those numbers. But it's not only about scaling out, it's also about scaling up and scaling deep, and those the institutional frameworks and the local partnerships that Anna Maria mentioned is really where we are embedding, scaling approaches with partners, and addressing some of these systemic barriers to inclusive scaling, for example. So I just wanted to mention that. And then in terms of just the Juan Luigi's question around job creation, I think this is a really interesting one, because while we've only presented the accelerator, we are really trying to look at the entirety of the agribusiness ecosystem. So we look at the pipeline. In fact, we have another program that looks at an internship grant, where we are placing students in these agribusinesses through incubation hubs, where students get a chance to go through ideation exercises on how they think agribusinesses can scale climate smart agriculture. And then we work with universities in several of the countries to improve curriculum development, so that that curricula is more demand-driven, more industry-facing as well, so that the graduates coming out of universities are more ready for the workplace. Just wanted to add that. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I wish we had more time for our discussion today. Unfortunately, we're reaching the end allocated to the discussion. A lot of great ideas have been, put at the table. I think a good excellent progress, good results, and the words is just, if we had a crowding of the words today, we would have a beautiful map that has acceleration, scale, dream, game change, ecosystem approach, and I think the word dream will be the one that brings all of it together with the scale and acceleration. So with that, I'm going to thank all of you for connecting. A very big thank you to all our speakers for the time they spent with us, and many thanks. This is definitely a topic that's not for a one-off discussion. Already in the discussion today, there are elements where and ask from all of us to look at different issues and different topics, so to be continued. And many thanks, Chakib and Katie, for organizing. With that, have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much.